Next, we're going to consider an offshoot of growth models that we need SEM for, the cross-lagged panel correlation. In textbooks, this is often pitched as a way to try and answer the chicken and egg question. I need to clarify that this is not a growth model, although it will quickly borrow a growth modeling concept. Stay tuned. This model asks, if I measure two or more things, how do they predict each other over time? If one variable is consistently a stronger longitudinal predictor of the other, it is more likely to be a cause, lead, than an effect, lag. The cross-lagged panel correlation was first described by David Kenny. Of course, his description predated SEM, so we're basically going to update some of his concepts for the modern era. The core question of cross-lags can be thought of as a chicken or egg problem. The classic example, and the one I'm going to stick with this week, is the question of whether of kids who watch violent TV and also show aggressive behavior. What is the cause? Does violent TV cause aggressive behavior, or do aggressive kids gravitate to more violent TV? Now, you just heard me say cause. We all know that correlation is not causation, so shut my mouth for even saying this. Or are there circumstances where we might start to be able to say cause? In the figure above, we're exploiting the availability of more than one occasion in time. Generally, we believe that while things earlier in time can cause things later in time, but we generally don't expect things later in time to cause things earlier in time. So we have two previous to later sequences that are shown above. Path A is, does earlier violent TV predict later aggression? Path B is, does earlier aggression predict later violent TV? So both of these exploit temporal ordering. But the magic of cross-lagged correlations is that we can then compare the size of the A path to the size of the B path. If A is bigger than B, especially if it is significantly better, we might be able to say that TV is more predictive of later aggression than aggression is of later TV violence. And if the B path is bigger, then we're more likely to say that people who started more aggressive are more likely to watch subsequent violent TV. But of course, the figure is missing some things. Of course, at any given time, as our time-varying associations just showed, TV violence and aggressive tendencies are likely to be correlated. We want to control for that, so any lagged relationship reflects a unique emergent causal process. Also, the single best predictor of a thing is that same thing measured earlier. That's because of test-retest reliability and the fact that we tend to produce similar responses over time. So we also want to control for autocorrelation, or the association of these constructs with themselves over time. That way, any lagged relationship reflects a unique emergent causal process above and beyond any autocorrelation. Kenny expressed this as cross-lagged analysis is based on a set of assumptions, synchronicity and stationarity. Now, I'm greatly oversimplifying these because much of the text in Kenny's article is devoted to defining, explaining, and discussing multiple variants of these concepts. But in general, the assumptions boil down to this. A, both measures must be measured at the same time, each time. And B, both measures must show similar or identical levels of autocorrelation over time. If one is more stable than the other, or one is more reliable than the other, this will affect the ability to assess the cross-lag. Remember, the lower the reliability, the less a measure can correlate with another. So if one variable has lower reliability, it'll produce a smaller cross-lag, and that makes it an unfair comparison of equals. C, both measures should show roughly equivalent validity over time. They should be similarly related to each other concurrently over time, so we can reasonably infer that we're measuring the same thing. So, distilling that down, we assume that the test-retest stability of both measures is the same, and the validity, how the measures are related to one another concurrently, is the same over time. Okay, but there's a problem. If we're assessing some kind of cause-effect relationship between x and y, and we want to impute causal status to that, then we have to be sure that there are logical grounds to assume causality. But what the spuriousness concept reminds us of, generally, in all correlations, remember, correlation is not causation, one or more outside variables may be causing both x and y, and this spuriously creating the impression of a true relationship between them. For example, as a child grows older, their femur may grow longer, and so may their performance on a working memory task, but we don't think the femur and working memory are really directly related. Instead, we think they share a joint causal influence of maturation, nutrition, etc. Now, spuriousness takes on a slightly nuanced meaning in a cross-leg. In cross-legs, shown here, we first have to make the validity assumption that we have controlled for the concurrent relationship of, say, TV and aggression. Otherwise, my association between TV at time 1 and aggression at time 2 may reflect nothing more than the fact that those two variables tend to go together. People who watch more violent TV also tend to be more aggressive. Second, we need to control for autoregression. We need to make sure that the association between aggression at time 1 and violent TV watching at time 2 is unique, independent of the variance those constructs share concurrently at any one occasion. We don't want to assign longitudinal association to a relationship that actually reflects concurrent relations between these variables.